Immigrated from Egypt and been here since I was 9 years old.
Oh,
So
nice.
Cleveland is home.
Oh, nice. 2022 December, I was in Egypt and I loved it. I
Nice.
thought it was amazing. Yeah.
Which area?
Did the touristy stuff, went to Alexandria, then Cairo, of course, the Giza, pyramids of
Mhm.
Giza, then went to Luxor, Abu Simbel. So it was fascinating. I mean, I always say I don't have that much time or money to visit the same country twice.
Mhm.
But for Egypt, I was going to make that exception. I was like, it was amazing.
Nice.
Yeah. So I think it's I don't know, something about it, those was it Karnak temple or something, those tall pillars or huge and oh
In
my God,
Luxor?
Luxor. I
Yeah,
don't know, it was just fabulous.
those are amazing, and the pyramids were quite breathtaking, quite honestly.
Oh yeah,
It's to take in.
I don't know, it's
Um, could I ask you to, I'm gonna put you on hold for 1 second, and I will be
sure.
right back. We're expecting more people to trickle in, about
Hmm.
12 or so people. We're currently live on YouTube, and then we'll be getting
Hmm.
started in just very good.
Sure.
Padmini, if you don't mind, I'm gonna share my screen.
Sure.
I just have a couple introductory slides once we get
Okay.
started,
Hmm.
and then it over to you. Basically, you'll have the run of the meeting. If you need to stop for a break, I leave that up to the presenter. Questions as they come, or do you prefer to stop at certain intervals?
I'm okay going right through and then hopping off when I'm done. Oh,
I caught the
blessings.
mute button just in time. Okay, so you want to take questions as they come?
Yeah, so we can do that. Or how do you do it typically? Do they throw it in chat or?
Okay. Yeah, I basically encourage everyone to participate as much as possible,
Mm-hmm.
either verbally or entering questions in the chat window.
Sure.
Um, we have about a dozen people that RSVP'd for tonight's meeting, and then
Mm-hmm.
we have countless others on YouTube, and even more so once the meeting is posted. It'll get a greater number of viewership on YouTube.
Amazing.
Gotta love technology.
Oh God, yes. When it works for you.
You know, everyone's pushing for getting back to an in-person meeting. I support that to a degree, but on nights like this where we have whiteout conditions, nothing better than
Oh.
a virtual meeting. Makes it easy for everybody.
So you guys are having a whiteout right now. I think we are still just getting the flurries here.
Yeah, in my area, it said just a scatter of flurries in the beginning of the day, but it's just been nonstop. And at one point, it was whiteout conditions.
Oh
So
my.
grateful to have a home office and be able to run meetings virtually.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the little pleasures in life like that.
I agree.
Um, so as I mentioned, I have a couple introductory slides, and then I'll turn
Hmm.
it over to you. And then at the end, I also have a couple wrap-up slides,
Hmm.
as well as the link for a survey, and then we'll call it a night. Feel free to take as much time as you need for the demos and the presentation. 7:30 is just a rough ballpark for ending the meeting, but
Hmm.
being that it's virtual, you can take as much as you need.
Sure. Thank you.
Excellent. All right. If you're ready, we can go ahead and get started. Like I said, we're expecting more people to trickle in as we proceed. So let me go ahead and start the recording.
This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sam Nasser, and this is the Azure Cleveland User Group. A little bit about the group. We meet every month, typically every second week. The meetings are free of charge and open to the public, and we cover a variety of topics related to Azure, whether it's infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service. You can find all the meeting information posted at meetup.com at the link listed at the bottom of the slide. As we always do, I'd like to give a big thank you to our sponsors, the .NET Foundation for sponsoring the Meetup website, and NIS Technologies for sponsoring the virtual meeting space. Some general information, if you're joining us for the first time, please keep in mind participation is always encouraged. And like I always say, the only stupid question is the one not being asked. So always jump in with a question or a comment. However, when not speaking, kindly ask you to mute your microphones just to avoid any background noise. And we want to keep it casual but organized, meaning you're always welcome to chime in with a comment or a question. But at the same time, we want to keep it organized enough to give our presenter enough time to go through the slides and the demos. And lastly, the presentation is being recorded and will be posted on YouTube, and the link will be made available towards the end of the presentation. So for tonight's feature presentation, we have Model Evaluations by Padmini Soni. She joins us from Iowa, where she is a senior AI strategist for Resonance AI. She has over 25 years of experience with various Fortune 500 companies. She is the head of responsible AI growth strategy at the AI Leadership Institute, and she's also a regular keynote speaker. And if that's not enough, she is also the co-founder of the Asian Women Advancing AI, as well as the co-author of an upcoming book on OpenAI and GPT builders. So needless to say, she is someone who's very knowledgeable about AI, and we're definitely grateful to have her join us tonight. And so with that, let me turn it over to Padmini.
Thank you. Thank you
Welcome,
so much,
Padmini.
Sam. Thank you.
Glad to have you.
I appreciate that. And let me share my screen here. Hold on. Can you guys, hold on. Let me know what you see. Are you seeing the screen? Okay,
Looks good.
perfect. All right, so you presented one of my slides already. So, So thank you everyone for being here today. The title of my presentation is Trust but Verify. It's a beginner's guide to model evaluation in AI. So no technical knowledge necessary as such. I got into AI evaluations myself pretty recently, and it's been a fascinating topic. And what are evaluations and why do we need them? Evaluations are becoming central to building trustworthy AI systems. So trust but verify reflects a shift from this whole intuition driven deployment to something which is more evidence based performance. And we all know AI systems are very fluent, very confident, yet fluency and confidence does not guarantee correctness or safety. So that's why we need evaluations to help uncover gaps that are invisible during development, but very visible and obvious when users are exposed to it during production. So again, like I said, Sam already said this. This is Padmini Soni, founder and CEO of Resonance AI, and he went through some of the other stuff that I am involved with. Here is my LinkedIn QR code. So do connect with me. I'd love to connect with you. And yeah, let's be friends. All right, so let's hop right in. So what are model evaluations? Model evaluations, if you think about it, are like report cards for AI models. So you can think of them as scorecards that show where the model excels and where it struggles. So what is it good at and what is it having issues with? And evaluations help teams understand how a model behaves under different conditions and not just, the ideal ones. So if you remember, or if, for those of us who used to be or who are developers, when we would do this unit testing or system testing, if unit testing, if there was an issue that would come up, we would, um, change the code, run it, and see if that issue existed. Change the code, run it, and what would happen is over time, if for that particular use case we would try one or two instances, and once it worked, we would be like, great, this is good to go. So it would, and then those would become the ideal conditions. So evaluations are such that they help models understand how models behave under different conditions, not just the ideal ones, not the ones that you've just tested for. They create like the structured way of revealing strengths and weaknesses before the system reaches users. And they also help connect the model's behavior to what the business actually needs from it, by making this performance measurable. And by doing evaluations, you reduce uncertainty and thereby help improve decision making. So when you look at a model and you evaluate it and you do a good evaluation, your teams are more confident, when they're deploying and what adjustments have to be made when they are, when it's a go, no go decision or when to pause. And I want to make this distinction. People sometimes get confused between guardrails and evals. And guardrails are more of these inline safety checks, and they sit right in the line of that request response. So they will validate a user's input or the output, validate input to a model or an output from a model even before it reaches the user. So that's a guardrail. But on the other hand, evaluators or evaluations are typically after a response is generated, after a response is produced. And they measure the quality that a simple metric cannot simple metric cannot measure. So more of factual correctness or a completeness of an answer. So those are evaluations and those are different from guardrails, which lie in the input-output response path, right? So why do evaluations matter? Why do we need to evaluate? AI systems don't operate in these controlled environments. They are exposed to the world and they face these messy, unpredictable real world inputs. that's why measuring the performance, whether it's accuracy, fairness, safety, or the usefulness, it becomes very critical that we measure this. And without evaluations, we risk discovering flaws after a user is impacted or after a user is affected. And the cost of these errors is large. It's a loss of trust, the behavior becomes inconsistent or there are compliance exposures, and the cost of those errors can be far more than the cost of testing. I don't know how many of you know what happened when Air Canada ran into this issue where a user, I think they were talking to a Air Canada chatbot and they asked about bereavement fares. And I think what the Air Canada chatbot said that, within 90 days of travel or something, you can apply and get money back, a bereavement, some discount. And when the user actually did that, Air Canada declined, saying that was not in their policy, but their chatbot had said that. And they tried to play it as a separate entity, but that wasn't true, and the user was compensated. So if an evaluation was done, if a request and the response that the chatbot gave and what should have been the expected response, if these were sort of evaluated, they probably would not have run into this. So there is this reputational risk also that comes into play. So without good rigorous evaluation frameworks, organizations expose themselves to significant risks, and that can undermine trust. So that's why evaluations matter. So let's move on to types of evaluations. And when I think of it, I identified these four are the types of evaluations. So let's start with human evaluations. And I always emphasize that it's very critical to start with a human actually looking at a response output. I agree that cannot be scaled, but it is very critical that we start with just a sample set of understanding, having a pair of human eyes on it. Because models or automated response automated evals do not catch that that slight nuance or that slight feeling, this doesn't feel quite right kind of feeling. Humans are good at spotting these, and and when you do it early on, it becomes very helpful, because humans can interpret context, they can look at expectations, cultural context, subtle user needs, and they can surface it, which models don't do it on their own. So these kinds of human evaluations, do keep in mind, they are very essential early on during development, and they can lead into what is called error analysis, right? So when you have a data set response from an evaluation data set response. So what by that I mean is you have your input prompt, you have your expected answers, and you have the answers given by the model. When you look at it, you can, and when I say look at it, I mean a human looks at it. A human can immediately look and say, oh, this was the expected answer. This looks slightly off. I mean, those slight nuances. And sometimes, let me give you an example. If you think of a customer bot for a clothing store, say, and you look at it and you look at the responses and notice that every time, if you're looking at a pair of women's jeans, the answers seem to be a little off. You know that then there is something wrong with something related to that product. Either the model has not been trained correctly on it, or the system prompt is not okay. So you can immediately categorize it, or you can fix it, and then you can move on to the next one. So those are quick fixes, and those are subtle fixes that a human can immediately identify. So start with human evaluations. Then the second one is intrinsic evaluations, what I call the quantitative metric based. these are more of, related to accuracy and, the NLP, the natural language of a model, and they provide a quick benchmark for comparing models. So in Azure AI Foundry, you do have these, and I'll get into this a little later in a future slide. But these are quantitative metric based. You can say, is it a 1 or 2 or 3? So you can actually quantify it. So that is the second one. Then there are what I call extrinsic evaluations, which measure whether the model actually drives what the real world outcome is, or what your product cares about. And it is basically tries to identify whether your AI system produced the business result, and it looks at the end to end of an AI system. Did the system complete the task successfully? Did the user reach their goal? Did the workflow produce the correct result? So it applies to more of a multi-step agentic workflows where a model may perform well on certain isolated metrics, but still fail on, to deliver the final outcome. And then finally, uh, adversarial evaluations, stress testing, AI red teaming. So you do have that in Azure AI Foundry, and these are basically trying to stress test edge cases, push the system in unexpected ways, ambiguous phrasing, give sort of contradictory instructions or have malicious inputs, prompt injections. So that's where AI red teaming comes. And if anyone is interested, if you want to know where the word, the AI, the red teaming word came from, it comes from the Cold War era, during military war games where they designated a red team, which was, and a blue team, which was NATO, and the red team, I think, was the Soviet Union or something like that. But so this is where that word comes from. So red teaming is more of the adversarial attack, and blue teaming is more of the defense. So we do have that. And in today's session, I want to focus more on the first two, which is the human evaluations and the intrinsic evaluations. All right. So with that, let's go to the next slide. And these are what we can find in Azure AI Foundry. We have the AI quality metrics, so the AI assisted metrics, which is basically identifying whether your input, your output that the model gave, whether it was grounded. So whether the data, the response that it gave, whether it came from, the context that it was trained on, whether it is relevant, is it fluent? So there are a few examples of that I can show you. And then there is one more where it's got all these different scores. Rouge, and Rouge stands for something recall oriented, just something. But you would have to, I can't remember these. I can just remember the acronym, not the detailed name. But now, for instance, the AI quality NLP that can look at, when it does for instance, like a sentiment analysis, is it able to identify the right sentiment? Is it able to say that when is the sentiment negative? Is it neutral? Is it positive? So those are metrics that you can measure. And then you have risk and safety metrics, which is the output. Is it harmful? Is it biased? Is it violent? So those are some of the other metrics that you can evaluate on. So before I go on, I want to pause here for a second. Are there any questions? Anything up until what I said?
So far, nothing in chat.
All right, then let's move right along. So I want to stress again upon human versus automated evaluations. So, and I wanted to do a quick comparison. We, as humans, when we evaluate a response, we can identify subtle differences, whether it's something different in the tone. Is it appropriate? Is it culturally relevant? We are able to identify that. We're able to catch that instantly. Whereas but at the same time, we can't do this at scale, obviously. We can't look at 10,000 rows of data. But if we have a good sample set, then we can detect. We can detect like bias and harm. We can understand the context. We can validate edge cases. This is what we bring in as humans. But on the other hand, when we look at automated evals, they can be done at scale. They can be done really quickly, and they are repeatable. They are objective. A human eval is more subjective. The way I evaluate something may be different from the way somebody else evaluates it. So without a rubric, it becomes difficult to have the exact same kind of evaluation. But then automated evals are easier by another LLM. So that is where the term, if you've not heard of it, LLM as a judge comes in, where another model evaluates your current model if you're doing a model evaluation. So that LLM becomes a judge of your model. And for evaluations, I always recommend a hybrid approach. So start with a human evaluation for all those quality and nuance judgments, and go on to an automated evaluation for scale. And just to give you like an example of how a human evaluation or a human review becomes useful. So suppose a customer comes and writes, hi, I got charged $150 on my account, but I ordered something only for $20. So a model can respond and say, sorry about that. It may be a mistake, or we can check your order history, blah blah blah. But a human agent can go deeper at when you so this is when your first level of evaluation can go in deeper and say, oh, I see that the $150 was a pending authorization from our shipping partner, and that'll be refunded to you, etc., etc. So you know that the human added a little more context and it was a little more nuanced. So when you do that evaluation and a human finds that the model just gave this plain vanilla answer, you can go back in and say, hey, maybe we need to train that model to respond better. It needs to be more nuanced. It needs to see if there are pending authorizations. So that's where you want a human eval to happen first, then the automated, but you can't do either or. It's always a hybrid approach is good. So let's look at the evaluation pipeline. So when you have to start an evaluation, what do you do? Number one, you establish clear objectives and you establish measurable outcomes, which have to align with the business requirements, right? So if you have like a business requirement which says that the return policy is 60 days, then you want to make sure that the model is not saying something else. So you have to have these clear objectives. Then you choose the right metrics, whether it's quality, safety, security. Select the right metrics. That's number two. And then you have to build a good evaluation data set. Focus your time on understanding how good your data set is. Is it representative or is it too narrowly focused? Does it, handle all use cases? You have to curate this data set, and you have to, try to include some edge cases. So once you define your success criteria and select the metrics, build that data set. Then, like I've said, I've repeated myself so many times, run a human error analysis. And I'll show you this when I do the demo. Do a human manual evaluation. Look at your responses, say if it's correct or not correct, Identify what was wrong. Identify if there were a certain set of errors that are related to each other, like I gave you the example of the women's jeans. See if they all fall into a same bucket. Run that human eval. Once you do that, then go into running automated evals and test it against, the model response, against the ground truth, against fairness, reliability. And once you complete that, then make the decision of whether something has to be changed, whether something has to be updated, whether the model has to be retrained. Do you need to reject something, or do you need to accept certain things the way they are? That's when you make that decision. And then you have to redo this. So monitor frequently. We all know AI systems are not one and done. So you need to monitor regularly and frequently, and you go through this again. All right. And I call myself an AI ethicist, so I always have a slide on responsible AI, and that applies to evaluations too. Evaluations must extend beyond these performance metrics. They have to look into ethical considerations. Whether your response is biased, whether it's being fair, is there a certain level of explainability built into it? Is there compliance with industry regulations, health regulations? Is it safe, and is it consistent? So, for instance, if you have heard of model drift, and I'll explain that in an upcoming slide. If you've built a model that say has a certain demographic that is built for, and the world around it changed. Say it was only for English speaking, and then we have more folks who are speaking a different language, and the model remains the same, then it doesn't serve the new people speaking the new language. So that means there has been a change in the real world outside. The model has not changed. That's what's actually called model drift. So you need to assess whether the responses are satisfying the new demographic. And if you find that it is not, if you evaluate your model and you saw that, for instance, like I've here, the model performs well on English queries or poorly on Spanish inputs, then that reveals like there is this imbalance, which means that we have to retrain. We have to retrain for a new data set. We have to keep it equitable. So responsible AI equals responsible evaluation. So always make sure that you come in with the lens of responsible AI too when you come into model evaluations. So we talked about, what an evaluation, pipeline looks at, why we need evaluations, what are the metrics, but we do have to understand that there are challenges in evaluations too. So there is no single metric that can explain everything, right? It's hard. It's hard because you're testing different things. So there's no single metric that can, evaluate safety or quality or fairness or bias. You have to have, that's why you have to have multiple types of evaluations, and it has to be kind of well-rounded. And then data sets. Evaluation data sets may not represent real users. So that's why it becomes, you have to curate it. When you look at your data set, you have to have somebody say, is this data set a true representation? When you evaluate and you find it's not, you go and update your data set and say, okay, looks like we missed this set of people or this set of users or this set of test cases. So you go in and you put that in there. So make sure that there is no data set bias, because that's a challenge. And then what I talked about earlier, human inconsistency. When you have human evaluators, make sure that you have a clear rubric, because otherwise the way I evaluate versus somebody else evaluating will be different. And then, you run into this conflict. So make sure that you identify a clear rubric of human evaluations, what is accepted, what is not. And then model drift, which I just mentioned. So what is model drift? A model drift is when a model's predictive performance, so what it says, how it responds, degrades over time because the world around it changed, but changed from the training data that it was trained on. So that is model drift. The model is remaining static. It was trained and it is, it's a snapshot in time, but the world around it changed. So that becomes, so when you go back and you find that there is model drift, you have to go back and you have to retrain. So you cannot just train it once and it's not one and done. And then if you find that your evaluations are all green, then that is a red flag. It is impossible that everything always passes, unless you go in and specifically test the first time you run. If everything passes, then that means you have not picked the right data set. So more, that's a false confidence, right? So these are some of the challenges in evals. So make sure that you go and take a look at it, understand your data. If you have human evals, make sure you have a rubric, understand model drift, and always watch out for that false confidence in models. And then we have a few common pitfalls that I wanted to bring to your attention, which is again, do not just test easy questions. Look for those, you know, very messy ones. Something that says, oh, I can't access my account. Oh, I've been using 3 emails, but one of the emails I'm locked out of. People have all kinds of, we as users have all kinds of issues. So make sure that you try to think through and identify even those edge cases. Use a good representative like evals, a data set. Always have a baseline where you can see if your model where it has improved over, based on its performance. If you don't have a baseline, then you don't know whether you've done better. And then never look at the average. Say you run through a bunch of tests and everything is like 5 out of 5, 5 out of 5, and groundedness 5 out of 5, robustness 5 out of 5, and then you have a few that are 1 out of 5, which then gives you an average score. It may not be representative. Maybe the 1 out of 5 is a safety risk. So don't just look at an average. Look at every single evaluator that you're looking at. Do not just look at one average and say that the model is doing well or the data set as well. And then identify what the scoring means. Identify what a 1 is versus what a 2, 3, etc. is. And then another thing I've seen people do is evaluating only the final answer. You have to look at every decision point in your AI system. And then if it still passes all filters, it can still violate certain policies. So make sure that you look at your model, you look at the policy, you look at it and see if it is actually working for your business, working for the use case, and working for the people that it's built for. All right, and with this, I'll pause again before I get into a demo. Sam, any questions? Anything?
I don't see any in chat.
All right. So let me I'll stop sharing the screen and I'll go into my Foundry. So let me, and I'm sure your users are familiar with how Foundry looks. So I have already started it. So let me go in there. Hold on. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Yep, it's up.
All right. So I'm sure you guys familiar with Microsoft AI Foundry. So once you come to this screen where you have, you're in your hub and in your project and you have access to the evaluations, this is where the evaluations sit, right here under Protect and Govern. So when you click on evaluations, you are given access to these up here: automated evaluations, AI red teaming, manual evaluations, and the evaluator library. So And really quick, the evaluator library is something that you can define in an SDK and run evaluations. So you have Microsoft evaluators, others can add evaluators, and it can run through all these different kinds of evaluators. But today, let's go into manual evaluation. So when you do a manual evaluation, and then let me say I want to do a new manual evaluation, you can put in your prompt here. And a manual evaluation is basically you already have a data set. You already have a data set of your inputs, of your expected outputs, and then you can either run it individually here, or you can evaluate it based on the response that is already given. So let me import a test data set. Let me see. Done. Let me pick this one. All right, so I have a CSV, and for your evaluations, you typically need CSVs or JSON files. All right, so I'll do next. And it gives you a preview of your data set. So for this demo, what I did was, it was more of, different kinds of contexts where, a box contains 12 blue pens and 8 red pens, and so many were removed, just so that we are able to actually know what the answer is. So you go in here and then you select what your input was. It was there in my CSV. It had the input and the expected answer as the titles of the columns. And here is my expected response, my expected answer. So you have to select them in your data mapping, data set mapping, and then you add. And you can give a detailed prompt here. But now you have your input and you know what the expected response is. So for instance, this case, it says a box contains 12 blue pens and 8 red pens. A student removes 5 and 3. So how many pens are there in the app? So it's 12 plus 8 minus 5 minus 3. So it is 12, right? So you can run this. It'll run it for you. And it tells you, it gives you this answer. You look at the answer. Does it look good? Yes. Thumbs up. All right. Then you can do similarly. Let's come over and see one of these. So it says a product ships 3 to 5 business days, returns are accepted. Within 30 days, a customer support is available from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And the question is, extract only the return policy. So we are not looking at the hours. We are not looking at the shipment. We are looking only at the return policy. And it says the return policies are accepted within 30 days is the expected answer. And now let's see what the model says. And really quick, I want to go up here. This is the model that we are working with, the GPT-4.mini, right? And you can play around with the temperature and your response tokens. And you can also, if you want a RAG model, you can add your data source here. So let's go back here. And then you run this. And it gave a right answer. If it said something like, if it hallucinated and and said 3 to 5 business days or something like that, then you would have given thumbs down. But here you again can do a thumbs up. So you're visually seeing, manually evaluating. Let's pick one more. So this says the training workshop will be held on April 22nd at a downtown community center. Participants must bring a photo ID and arrive 15 minutes. The question is, what must participants bring? It says photo ID. Let's run it. It says participants must bring a photo ID. Run it again. Same thing. So similarly, you can go in and as you do it, you'll see, how many thumbs up, thumbs down. And these are easy questions. And, GPT 4.1 is good. So it gave good answers. So this is how you can run your manual evaluations. You can save your answers and you can try more data sets, and you can try JSON data sets also. Any questions?
I have a question for you, but it may be out of scope.
Mhm,
As far as once you train a model and you evaluate it, if you
mhm,
distill the model into a smaller model, are they
mhm.
still accurate, or do you recommend still going through the evaluation process?
I do recommend going through an evaluation process. Anytime you change it, even if you're distilling it from an existing model, you want to make sure that there was nothing lost in the distillation. So I would recommend doing it. But that's a great question.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yep. So then let me come back out of this. So those are, I'll exit without saving. And I had done a different evaluation, a manual evaluation. So uh, it was about something else, but, and I had a different set of, you can give a system message as big or small as you want it to be. So now let's go into automated evaluations. In this, again, you start with a new evaluation. And now I am evaluating like a query response data set. I have a question answer data set. So let me come in here. And I will upload a new data set. And I have this one where I've created it. I created this data set and I asked it to have some failure modes in there just for the demo. So it gives you a preview here. So where it talks about, again, the query, the model response, what is the context, and what is the ground truth. The ground truth is the expected response. This is what we want the model to save. And then this is the response that the model actually gave. So I've uploaded this data set and I can go in, and here is where I can pick all these different metrics that I want to test it on. So if I go in here and I look at the test criteria, I have all this. This is for the AI quality. Remember we talked about. So we have these different ones, the pass fail or the text similarity in the different ones. So let's look at the Likert scale, which is the 1 to 5. So I am testing groundedness. And I am testing groundedness for this data set, and I'm going to grade it with a model. So I can pick like 4.1 mini again, and it has a prompt in here. It's quite an extensive prompt, but here's where I'm going to do the mapping. So it asks for the context. So I'll map it with the context. Again, I have a CSV or a JSON file, and then I have identified what is the context, what is the query, what is the response, and what is the ground truth. So here I map it to the query and then map it to the response, and I add it. So I have one test criteria. Let me add a couple more. So for relevance, it measures, like it says here, how effectively it responds a particular query. So all that it needs is the query and the response. So add that in here. And then just going to test one more. Right? right? So I have these three different criteria that I'm going to test my data set with. I have this data set that I created, but ideally it is something that comes out of your AI system. And then you run your evaluation for it. So then I say next, and I give a name. So let me say NIS demo failure mode, right? I do have a few failure modes in here for demos. So I do that, and then I submit. Now, this will take some time to run, all right, because it's prepping and it'll queue it up. So let's go back here. And then you'll see that I had, hold on. I think I missed a column in here. That's okay, it says it's queuing up. And then, so here is what I'd run. It was a failure data mode. So in groundedness, it just was 40%. In relevance and coherence, it was at 90%. So if I look at the data itself, I can go through each one of these and see why it passed or failed and what was the response. So the context, say, let's look at a failure mode. It says the business hours are Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern, close weekends and major holidays, right? So the ground truth, so the question is, what are your business hours? The expected answers are Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. But what the model responded was, we are available 24/7 with round-the-clock support, which is incorrect, right? So it failed. Though we had given it the context, it failed in groundedness. And then if we look at something else like here, like it failed across all three, the context is plan upgrades available in account settings, billing, charges are prorated, blah, blah, blah. Upgrades take effect immediately. So the question was, how do I upgrade my plan? And it should say, go to account settings, billing, change plan, and select your new plan. But instead it said, upgrading your plan is super easy. Just think about which plan you want and it will automatically upgrade based on your thoughts. Our AI reads minds. Obviously, that is absolutely incorrect. Then, the response, and it tells you why it gave it a failed mode. It said the response introduces unsupported and unrelated information about the AI reading minds. So it gives you all of that. Similarly, for relevance, it failed because it was not relevant to the answer. So you can go in and you can see this. Now let's do one more evaluation. Now this time I will pick the one that had good answers. It's a JSON file here. And again, I'll go through the same steps. I'll add the same set of criteria again. I'll go through this a little quicker. And then I'll add a couple more so that it is similar to that one. NIS demo pass mode, right? And again, we'll submit it. Right, it's prepping and queue it up. And then I have the same one here. And you see it's 100% passed. So you went in, you looked at it, it had failed initially, you go and fix it, and you ensure. So here now it says business hours, let's look at the same one, close weekends, and ask, what are your business hours? And the response was It's available 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., right? So that was good. Similarly, for plan upgrades, the response is to upgrade your plan, you go through account settings, billings, select your desired plan. So it passed. So you had something that didn't work. You went in, you fixed it, you ran it, it didn't work. You fixed it, you ran it, and finally it works. So, and one of the things that you can do here, which is great, is hold on. So this is still running. So I can come in here and I can compare. Like this is similar to the ones that I had, the pass and the fail. I can compare the two evaluations that I ran. So here, you can go in here and you can see, you can compare the two runs. You know, how it failed, what scores it got, what it got when it passed. So, and then you can scroll down, you can read the responses, and you can also, at the bottom here, you can also have these, visuals, charts of how it performed across different evaluations. So this is how it is. We can also, in our evaluations, we can also evaluate a model itself. And I really quickly wanted to do this. So that was evaluations, but I wanted to show you some agent evaluations. And let me see if I have, okay, I have this agent. And and this agent I had built, it was basically, I think it had about cloth masks and, regular medical masks or something like that. But what I wanted to tell you was when I try this in Playground, let me just say run and see what it does. What I wanted to show you was, so it gives you everything about that particular document. It had about cloth masks and medical masks and all that. But what I wanted to say was, suppose I ask, are cloth masks good? And it gives a response, right? You can, for an agent, you can go into your thread logs here, and based for every run, you can look at the evaluation, whether, so it gave a 5 out of 5 for intent. Initially I just said run. So as you have your conversation, you can come in here and you can take a look at this. So, and also the new Foundry has a different look and feel. And let me see if I can show you that here. Let me, if I launch Azure AI Foundry here, if you see here, I just wanted to show you like what the new Foundry looks like. And you pick a project. Let me pick one of mine. So it's looking at models. And I think I go into build and under evaluations. If you do create, you can see here you have now these multiple options. In our Foundry that I was just demoing so far, you just had the model and data set. When you went into evaluations here, now you can evaluate the agent itself. So, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. I think your screen is still stuck on the Azure portal right now.
Oh, oops, sorry. Okay, let me do it again. Okay, let me launch, and okay, this is what happens when I clicked on launch.
There we go.
All right. And here now you say start building. And I'm picking and say, let's go. Do you guys still see it? Yeah. And then I said, start building. I have not really used this, but I want to just share it with you as much as I know about it. So under models, go and click on build. This is where you see evaluations, right? And if you click on evaluations and you want to create a new eval now, in this case, you have all three: agent, model, and data set, as opposed to what we had in the past. Where we had just model and data set. Here now we have agent, model, and data set. So this is the new Foundry. I have not played with it as much, but you guys should definitely try. I want to be doing that too at some point in time. So that was the demo. Let me pause here again and check. Is there anything? All right. So let me go back here.
So I posted a question in the chat
Yeah.
regarding the model that handles the evaluations. Can that be selected, or is it pretty much set in Foundry?
No, you can select. You can select the model that you want to evaluate. So if I go back in here, where was I? Let me share this tab. So when I go back in here, and I did this, whatever, I'll just pick this one. I say next, and when I go and add, this is where I'm picking the model.
I see. Okay.
This is where you pick the model that is evaluating.
Okay.
So let me cancel out of this. So yeah, no, thank you for that question. Let me come back here. And so what I wanted as key takeaways for today was that evaluations are key. And I mean, I would tell people that how 2024 was the year of the RAG, 2025, the year of agents. It almost feels like 2026 will be the year of evals, because it is the foundation of trust. You absolutely need to build trustworthy AI, because now more and more people are going to use AI. And we saw that MIT had that study that said 95% fail to return ROI. If you don't trust your system, you will not use it, and hence you won't get an ROI. And evals are foundations of trust. And second, please make sure that you have this hybrid approach. Do not just leave it to automated evals. You have to have a human in the loop. You have to have humans evaluating, doing that error analysis before you give it off to an automation. And always use it responsibly. Ensure that you have responsible evaluations too. So test for safety, test for bias and fairness. And this is not a one and done. You have to continuously monitor. You cannot say, oh, I evaluated it once and throw it across the wall. No, you have to evaluate it. And then there are several tools, like we talked about Azure AI Foundry. You can do AI evaluations like OpenAI. If you go into their platform.openai.com, you have a way to evaluate there. Microsoft has the responsible AI toolbox, but if you look at the GitHub, it's a little old. But there you have all these different tools for I think like fairness, you have the fair learn, and for interpretability, you have interpret ML, then you have all these different tools. So definitely things are changing all the time. So what I say today may not be relevant like 5 months from today, but keep up with it, look at it, test it, play with it. And if you have questions, always post it on, like the GitHub forums and all that, and you'll get answers. So with that, I just wanted to, this is a QR code. Please scan it and give your feedback. I would always appreciate it, always trying to improve. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. And like I said, do connect with me. And thank you, Sam, for the opportunity.
Thank you. Appreciate your time and your effort. Definitely a great presentation. You covered a lot of great information. I was just curious as you were going through it, and you at the end stressed that you need to have a man-in-the-middle approach to do the approvals. I'm curious, with all the organizations that you've worked with in the past, have you had any stories where they didn't implement the man-in-the-middle and things backfired?
Yeah. Well, I have not so much so man in the middle. I've heard stories of, and this not directly with me, where large, even huge healthcare firms are like, we need to get this out. We need to get our tool, our AI system out. We can throw in the responsible AI part of it, the human in the loop part of it later. Let's just get the system out. And this is a large healthcare firm. I'm not going to name it, but it's a large healthcare firm. And that is pure disaster. You don't, and what we do it is, you never want responsible AI as a window dressing. It has to be foundational. You have to build it in right at the start. And even if someone says that, no, we don't want it, it's like, one of my friends says, putting veggies in the brownie batter. You quietly put it in because you know that's the right thing to do. You have to build systems responsibly. So you do your part in making sure that you build in the responsible AI framework right from the start. You don't try to bypass, even in your evals, saying, let another LLM take a look at it, and I will, when we'll call it done. Make sure you have a human in the loop.
Very good.
Yeah. And I know I had planned it for an hour, so I know this was an hour and a half, but I had planned it for an hour, so yeah.
Oh, no problem at all.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time and your effort. Currently, there are no other questions in chat, but if I may, I'd like to share my screen, have some concluding announcements to go through.
So yeah, so I stopped sharing, so yeah.
All right. All right, very good. So if you look over in the chat window, you'll see that there's various links. And first is the link to the YouTube channel. If you would please subscribe to get upload notifications. The video of this recording will be uploaded to YouTube in just a few short days after the editing process. In addition, you can subscribe to my blog at samnasser.blogspot.com. Excuse me. This is where I post various technical events. And then last but not least, the feedback eval form. If you would please take a few moments to fill that out so we can provide Padmini with some constructive criticism. In addition, another perk to filling out the eval is, thanks to the folks at Uno, we have the visual designer for the visual platform.net apps that is available, and it will be drawn from the evaluations that are going to be submitted. So if you're interested in having a free license for that, I strongly urge you to submit the eval form. Lastly, those who are looking for jobs and those who are hiring, please make yourself known. And if you're in the job market, I strongly urge you to check out devitjobs.com. It is where you can search on the various technologies, the region, whether remote or in person, and a variety of different attributes. So again, the link for that is devitjobs.com. And last but not least, my contact information. My email is snasser@nistechnologies.com. And you can also find all my social links over on Linktree/Sam Nasser. And if we're not connected on LinkedIn, like Padmini said, let's be friends, let's connect. So you can find my link, you can find my LinkedIn profile at the link listed at the bottom of the slide. And so with that, thanks again to Padmini for a great presentation. Thank you all for attending, and wishing you a happy and healthy, prosperous new year. since our next meeting is going to be in 2026. And hope you enjoy the rest of the holiday season.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
and happy holidays.
Thank
Bye.
you. All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
Is it Chuba or Chuba? All right. I guess you're not available, but thank you all for attending, and good night, everyone.